Hello, hello, hello. This is New Dad, and I am Uncle Tickles. If you're listening to this, then you've officially made it. This is the last episode of season one, the season that I originally thought would end in April, and then I said in June, and then I believe I said somewhere around Thanksgiving or Christmas, and now here we are in 2021. If you've been following along all season, you've probably noticed that the episodes have become more sporadic in their release. I hope you also notice some growth, not just in me, but also in the quality of the episodes. As we went along here, I put a lot of time and effort into that, and I like to think that they have gotten better as time goes on, even though maybe we're not releasing as many. But I can tell you there will be some big changes for season two. We talk about some of those with one of our guests today. And I've alluded to some big news on the New Dad Facebook group. We still can't make a formal announcement on that, but we can reveal a few things. And what we can say is this. Kate Flynn, host of Pop Mom's podcast, and myself will be launching a podcast network. That's going to be, all happening in the very near future. We've been working on it since before Thanksgiving. That means we're going to be launching 2 new podcasts. Nothing to do with parenting. We will be involved as hosts for those 2 shows, although perhaps not for every single episode. So maybe that puts a little mystery behind it. But we can say this about the 2 shows. One will delve into the world of pop culture, and the other into the world of psychedelics. I'm really, really excited for both these new shows. Something, it's kind of relit my fire, and Uncle Tickles is going to be coming in hot on a couple of these. So stay tuned. We will have a lot more information and formal announcements on those in the very near future. What does this mean for New Dad and its listeners? Well, very little changes. New Dad will still be able to be found in all the places you're either listening or watching it. Here's what will change. The YouTube channel and the Facebook group will become a YouTube channel and Facebook group for the podcast network. So none of your New Dad goodness goes away. In fact, it's really like adding value because you're going to be able to get your New Dad content and all the up-to-date information on the 2 new shows as well as Pop Mom's podcast and any other new content that we develop in 2021. So really, it's like Uncle Tickles is giving you a belated Christmas gift and saying, hey, I know 2020 wasn't great for everyone, but I'm going to make it better. And that's all exciting, but I'm actually, as exciting as that all is, I'm actually more excited to talk about this episode, this last episode of season 1. We have, 2 amazing guests. We have my wife, Lida, back. She was featured in episode 1. So a nice little turn of symmetry here. And you have the Alpha and the Omega. And then we have the most requested guest for season 1, my dad, Papa Pappas. He is here in the house. And I was surprised by the conversation with my dad, and not because it was revelatory or because anything shocking came out. Almost the opposite, or the flip side of that coin. I was surprised by his perception of not just his own life, but also our upbringing and just how rose-colored that perception was. And I'm not saying I dispute anything he says in the interview. I want to be clear about that. He really did the best he knew how, and there was no doubt he worked hard for his family. He loved us and was there for us in a lot of ways that his own dad wasn't there for him and his brothers and sisters. But I do wish I had pushed back more in this interview, to be totally honest with you. I guess I didn't do it for a few reasons. First, I'm a tiny podcast with an even tinier listener base, and I've noticed it with myself where I suddenly decide not to talk about an area of my life that is not easy to speak about, but is something I very much intended to talk about in an episode. And that's just as simple as, sometimes people don't want to air their dirty laundry. You think you're willing to talk about it, but then you put a camera in someone's face and hit record, and suddenly that desire diminishes. On top of that, I'm still growing as an interviewer, which is a really nice way to say I'm not very good yet. You would think that one way to minimize or neutralize your lack of talent asking questions would be to interview someone you know really well, like, I don't know, your dad. But for me personally, I think in a lot of ways, knowing him so well made pushing back on his recollection of our upbringing even more difficult. And finally, in a perfect world, I would interview someone like my dad because the conversation spans such a huge amount of time, his whole life and my whole life, nearly 70 years. I would like to do 2 different interviews, multiple hours. This was just a little over an hour and a half. Consider this the Cliff Notes. We will have my dad return as a guest. I will continue to improve as an interviewer. And without any further ado, we will get to our final guest of season 1, New Dad, an episode I like to call Beauty and the Beast, because it features a real beauty in Lida and a real beast in Papa Pappas. Won't make you wait any longer. Probcause, take us to Papa Pappas. This is it, the last episode of New Dad. Thank you for joining me, Uncle Tickles. We have our first guest of the season, and this will be one of our last guests of the season. In a nice bit of symmetry, we had Lida and my brother Jono on the first episode. We're going to have Lida and my dad, John. So we have Lida Pappas and John Pappas.
Oh, I didn't know that.
In episode 1 and in the final episode. So we're going to get to Papa Pappas in a second, as I mentioned in the intro of the show. We're going to circle back to Lida. She was our first guest. We're going to get her thoughts on season 1 and also have just her thoughts on some of the themes of the podcast in general. So Lida, welcome to New Dad, or welcome back, I should say.
Thank you. Happy to be back. Is it my second time or third time? Didn't I do a little...
You might be right. We might have recorded. I don't know if it ever aired though.
Okay.
Yeah, it's either regardless.
Or I was drunk in the background of a previous episode.
For sure, definitely.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
That was the Guide to Being a Zaddy episode.
Yes.
You were very present in the background of that episode.
All about zaddies.
All about the zaddies.
Yeah.
I did that podcast in large part because it's something I've wanted to do for a long time. In large part because I enjoy being a dad, and with Solomon approaching, I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about it, but also because I wanted to be a better partner. I think that's part of being a good dad, right? And I outlined that quite a bit at the beginning of this season, just wanting to set a good example for my sons. I think it's as simple as that. So, with all that out of the way, the first big question is, what were your impressions of season 1?
It's crazy because it's almost been a year.
Totally, yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, I was pregnant with Solomon when we did the first episode.
Correct.
It went by so fast. A shit ton has changed, not just with our family, in the whole fucking world. So it's just like encompassing all of that and then touching on parenting topics, real world topics. It's just, I think it's been pretty cool. I've seen like a lot of growth with you. I think it's a really good, was it hobby? Or what would you call it? Passion, hobby? Like a passion project type of thing?
Sure.
Was really good for you. You needed some kind of outlet besides just your shitty job that you didn't like, and then, being a father. I feel like you needed something else a little more creative as well, I think there was definitely some learning curve of things, and I think you kind of identified some efficiencies and streamlined ways of doing things. You evolved as an interviewer. I think it's been awesome. We were just talking about, I think that first interview, which didn't make the cut, I think even the first one we did, we're all like facing forward. You got this fancy setup now, and I don't know, it's cool. It's been cool.
Did you have a favorite episode from season 1?
God, I honestly have enjoyed all of them in different ways, right? I like the ones where I know the people, like it's cool to hear like them talk on your show and their stories, but then I think I was most intrigued by, like the unusual upbringings, and then the across the world, across the globe episode.
Yeah.
Both episodes were with people I didn't know, or I'd met maybe once or via, the internet. So that was really cool, just hearing a different perspective on people's lives, right? You see a lot on social media. It's really hard to tell how families are, and it was just kind of cool to see, not even just other families, but other families from different countries and different upbringings. I just thought that was really cool and interesting.
And the Dads Across the Globe was by far one of the most watched, and also the episode that I think people stopped and talked to me about the most, or would mention the most. The other one, weirdly, which I didn't think there would be a lot of traction for, was the Jesus Pete episode.
That was a good one too.
Yeah, a lot of people really enjoyed that episode. Oh, I mean, it's not surprising because Jesus Pete is obviously an awesome,
Very charismatic.
yes. Cool guy. I just, sometimes you sit down and you go to record an interview, and the truth is you're not sure how it's going to go. I had touched on the fact that part of this was geared towards being a better dad, a better partner. So, with season 1 now behind us, do you feel like you have a better partner than the person you were in this relationship with?
You were always a good partner, though, so it's weird to ask that question. Am I a better partner? I feel like we've both evolved, right?
Totally.
I think you've improved on things that maybe I thought were areas of improvement, but then I'm like, I think I've evolved as well. So, not to like take over your show, but
Yeah, this is called the
New Mom.
Lida Mom podcast.
New Mom, but where some areas you thought you needed to improve on, I think in some areas I relaxed a little bit. Maybe you would argue against that, but I think so,
No, I think so. I think so a little bit. We're going to get to the pandemic here shortly. You touched on it already as well, but it's tough. And it's our situation is you work from home, so you're here. I'm here with the boys. Even people who are quarantining and who are stuck in this, a lot of our friends, they're not necessarily. We're 24/7, together all the time. So there is a.
I think we've done pretty good.
I think so too.
Not like we're fucking rock stars. But
No.
we're making it work.
Yeah, and there's weeks that are harder and easier than others, right?
Yeah.
For sure. But considering, it was one of those things where it was like I was talking to Jimmy Stabler and I didn't realize just how maybe unique our situation. I shouldn't say unique as far as in a global situation, but just in our circle of friends. I guess I just kind of think everyone's doing what we're doing, and it's not the case.
Oh, yeah, it's freaking different. Yeah, every situation is so different right now, and each family, each person is kind of treating this pandemic differently as well. So
for sure. Now, one of the other areas of the show that it was kind of like a sub goal was to lose weight, and I have lost weight. So am I more sexy to you now?
Hubba hubba.
Our audience wants to know. Are you more turned on?
Well, your feet look the same. Your toes are definitely like that.
We're talking about losing weight.
Okay.
My toes are pretty muscular.
My
toes are pretty muscular, so I don't think there's a lot of room for them to lose weight.
You've definitely lost weight. You look good. You've got lots of compliments. I see you every day though, so sometimes it's harder for me to notice. I also don't appreciate you losing weight when I'm trying to lose weight. I still got about 10 pounds before that pre-pregnancy.
A lot of weight to lose as well.
Yeah. It seemed it was pretty effortless for you though. You didn't work out. You didn't eat that much healthier. You cut out
I basically
cut out ordering dinner number 2 every night.
Yeah.
And you skip breakfast and lunch.
So I'm eating one meal a day now, with snacks. I have snacks and one meal a day, which I think most people would say is that's not enough for a man of my stature. So I'm just saying. And it's not like I'm not eating because I'm starving myself. It's just that's life with 2 kids, right? I pick at buff stuff.
You weren't a breakfast guy, really.
Never a breakfast guy, which is part of the problem. And
it's
then
intermittent fasting, though. And you didn't even have to try. I tried. Really
it's
hard.
just transition to being a full-time stay-at-home dad with 2 kids, and you'll eat a lot less.
I'm down.
We've already talked about some of the ways that it's changed our lives, but also I think it changed the show, and that's probably less important. But I had the show pretty outlined. I had an idea of what I wanted to do episode-wise, and then as you said, really early on the pandemic hits and it throws everything kind of upside down. But the progress report episodes were the ones that I think were affected the most, and through no fault of the individuals themselves, they were just harder to do because a lot of what I had, I guess, envisioned was, especially on the fitness side with Angela.
Day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to go
not
take
just
classes.
Like, yeah, I'm just not eating lunch or breakfast and lunch every day. Like, done. Like, there's not really much else you have to discuss.
Correct. And I thought that would also be a nice avenue to kind of like instill a little humor, right? Me doing these, and that all went away, right? So, so that was unfortunate, and now as we kind of sit and regroup and think of season 2, that's definitely something I'm going to have in mind. As far as a way, I don't think we'll have progress report episodes. I think it's going to look a lot different. I think season 2 in general is going to look a lot different.
Well, what do you mean? What are you thinking?
Well, I mean,
I haven't even asked you, I guess, at all.
I think one thing we changed, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, is in the beginning the show was more based on a topic. It was topic driven, right? So it'd be screen time or food with your kids, right? But a lot of people who are parents, when they're done being parents, what they don't want to do is hear about being a parent anymore, or at least parenting, like those. Some of that stuff you can jazz up a little bit, right? But it's hard to keep it like fresh. But what people liked were people's stories. They liked hearing the stories, and they liked interesting people, and that's something that I could relate to, because a lot of the podcasts I listen to are built around that. They're storytelling. They're interesting people telling about what makes them interesting. So that was one change. But I do want to have, maybe every so often, I want to bring back Jenrick and Flynn, who were fan favorites as well, and I like the rapport, and then maybe having a topic-driven one, or just even, doesn't even have to be topic-driven, but just so more interview-based, more situational, and also one thing I realize is I'm not a good enough interviewer yet to necessarily manage 2 people really well. With Flynn and Jenrick, it's different because
you guys have that background and you
right,
know
the
how
rapport,
to work off of each other.
100%. But with other individuals, especially individuals I don't know that well, as you know, I'm sometimes maybe not assertive enough.
Well, and it's different now because, again, it's remote, so that's even another hurdle, right?
Right, it is. So I think I'm going to try to limit the guests, to one-on-one. I think I'm better in that situation until I grow out. And then there'll be a couple other things, but I'm actually, as I said, interested in hearing what you would have to say as far as what are some things you would be looking for in season 2.
For this season, I don't think you dove in as hard as you could have to some maybe political or actual current events as much as you could have. So I think that's very important. You know what I mean? The election, huge impact on us, our children, our children's children. The Black Lives Matter movement, which came more to light, probably due to the pandemic, a lot of people have said,
For sure.
I think that was really another important thing. I think that would be cool to hear about, and maybe people that are very passionate about each side, and you do an interview with one and then the other, and then you also share your thoughts. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I did record an episode, based on politics. It was somewhat covering the election. It was somewhat covering the divisiveness leading up to the election. I lost a lot of that video. I have, most of the audio. I'm not sure what to do with the interview. The interview was with a gentleman I went to college with, Steve Lucan, who was in the House of Representatives for over 10 years, served in the military. Just overall great guy, and a Republican, someone who's from the opposite side of the political spectrum than that I fall from. So I do want to release the audio for that at some point. The problem is, and this is something that's crazy about 2020, I feel like if you're not releasing stuff really quickly, it becomes dated so fast.
Yeah, 100%. Everything's fucking changing every single day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
so
especially
with social media and how things blow up. I 100% agree. So maybe if you do that topic, you really, you put it in a plan. It's I'm gonna edit the next day. I'm gonna release it within 5 days, and then you could do that. 'Cause I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. I like it when people are passionate, about one way or the other. It's just very interesting to where they come from and why they think that way and how it impacts their friends and family and children. Yeah.
No, and also with Black Lives Matter, that was another one I had. It scheduled, fell through a couple times. The guest, yeah. I still want to get that guest on. Skrill, I know you're not listening, but if you are, there's still an open invitation, even though it's fallen through.
Oh, I also want you to have a celeb on. I don't know, like Jax Taylor.
I'm working on it. I am.
Maybe, who else do I really like that's a dad? Who just became a dad?
Well, I sent out a couple emails trying to get Bo, Jax, and Sheena's, whoever that guy is. I'd like to get all three of them.
Randall? Randall? Oh, no.
That's
she knows. I was thinking Lala.
yeah.
Yeah, anyone.
Yeah.
Any kind of celeb, B-list, C-list,
Yeah.
Z-list.
That was another heartbreaking turn of season 1. I thought I was really close to having the creators of Bubble Guppies come on the show. Yeah, both those guys.
What happened?
Uh,
They're busy?
Well, it was one of those things. Correspondence was like really positive and happening, and then it just trails
you told me
off.
about that. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah.
Well, let's work on that. I could help. I could slide in some DMs.
Yeah, I might have to.
Also, just crowdsource. Be like, yo, any of my friends, anyone listening, like, who the fuck has a celeb connection
True.
that would maybe want to be on a parenting podcast, world life view podcast? I don't know. You know.
True.
Crowdsource that.
Yeah, I will. One idea I had for season 2, because I really do like this idea that there's something from the podcast that's tied to personal growth, right? And something that's less, I guess, subjective, right? It's more concrete that there's a measurable thing to say, okay, you accomplished this or you didn't, right? Sometimes be like, oh, do you have a better partner? Like you said, it's like, well, it's hard to kind of say, that there's a little more gray area with that. So one of the things I was thinking of pursuing was, and it's something I've always wanted to do, so one thing I always wanted to do with this podcast, knocked it out. Another thing, have something write something and have it published.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought that perhaps that would be something that I could, it's very clear. It's like, did I write something? Yes. Was it published? Yes. Is it available for people to buy? It is. It's not so important that a lot of people buy it. Just the fact that I finish something, get it out, and put it and make it out there.
That's cool. Like, do you mean just like an opinion piece, or like a book, or like a movie script, or like what's the specific?
Well, I think at this point it's better to keep it pretty broad. Just to say,
okay.
I'm gonna write something.
Okay.
It'll be published, and someone will pay me, albeit maybe a small amount of money for those publishing rights.
Okay, that's a cool goal. Obviously I knew you were into writing before. You wanted, to do other things, but I feel like I haven't heard about that in a long time.
Going back to thinking about how season 1 was impacted with Corona.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're in the middle, let's be honest, we're in the middle of another lockdown. Shit isn't slowing down, it's ramping up right now. This is something that regardless, if I'm stuck here in the house, it's not going to affect my ability to turn on my laptop and write.
Yeah, maybe turn off the boob tube for a little bit, after the kids go to sleep, and do a little typing.
Well, yeah, or even I can do it probably while you're watching your shows, and we can still hang out and, Special thank you to season's 1 sponsors. So Merino Wealth was one of the sponsors of season 1 of New Dad. Sleep 6, thank you Sleep 6, and our newest sponsor, who you are going to see an exclusive commercial for before we go to the interview with Papa Pappas. Oh yeah.
That new knife is so smooth. I'm like, woo!
Yeah, the new knife is amazing.
I like the little one. You have the chopper.
Yeah.
But I got that little little chef.
Yeah, the little chef's knife.
Yeah, that works so well. I feel like we were living in did we have college? Yeah, did we have college knives?
We were cutting with butter knives.
Was I cutting with a knife I had from 20 years ago?
I don't know, but
what the fuck?
Copper Glaze, new sponsor of New Dad.
All right, that's
season
awesome.
2, they're going to be the official keynote sponsor for all of season 2. So yeah, here in a second we will be seeing our first commercial for Copper Glaze. But the tease, in a second, you're going to see an interview with me and my dad. We recorded the interview twice. Again, we had lost video that we recorded for about almost 2 hours. I feel like we're just at the tip of the iceberg with this.
Do you feel closer to your dad from after that or no?
I don't know about if I would say closer. I will say over the last 10 years, I've felt, immensely closer to my dad than I did growing up with him. I'll also say, as you listen to this interview, I don't think that he says anything that's not true. I think he's being honest throughout the whole thing. But I do believe that, a person's perception is their reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so his perception is that, he worked really hard, he loved us, and, overall we had a pretty good life. And I don't think that's wrong. I think he worked really hard, I think he loved us, and I think overall, we had a pretty good life. I think he underestimates a lot or downplays a lot in his life, and that's something you're going to see through the interview. So saying
probably because there's moments in a child's life that are more impactful than a parent notices. I think a lot of times, right? No matter what it is.
yes, but I'm even talking about his own childhood, stuff that I know about in his childhood.
And he's downplaying it.
He's downplaying how rough the neighborhood was, his upbringing,
Yeah.
and listen, he's on a podcast, right? And this is something I'm still struggling with. So many episodes deep is
being honest, not honest, but sharing it all.
Being yes, 100%. And even if I'm being totally honest with this season 1, right? I came out and I said, here are these things I want to change and I want to fix. And I want to be a better partner with you, right? And I'm talking about my socks and really
socks are still out in full force. Sometimes they get pushed to the side though.
But they got really. I was really good for a while. I kind of slipped recently. I
identified 4 socks earlier today.
Yeah. Socks are such a trivial fucking thing. Like if I was really trying to get to the bottom of it, we'd be talking about much bigger things, right? And that's hopefully, at some point, as the podcast progresses and I'm more comfortable in my own skin in front of the camera, I hope it's, and I feel like as it becomes.
You still don't feel comfortable?
Not 100%, no.
What are you at, 80, 70%?
Probably 75, 70, 70%. Look at social media. Everyone puts forth their best life, right? What you're seeing isn't a true representation of their life. And I think get someone.
No one's coming on and being like, yeah, let me talk about all the shit that happened in my life and my family's life. It's like, no, I want to talk about the good stuff. That's what people want to hear, but
100%.
That's what I want to share.
So if I have my dad on for 2 hours and I'm getting, and really 2 hours sounds like a lot, but it's not. So
no, we've already done how long? 40 minutes?
40 minutes. So really, and I'm trying to keep these episodes short too, that's another thing I've learned.
And then I'm already caught. I'm like, ask me more. Let's talk more. This is more, like I said, when we've talked in a long time.
But the thing is, I want to have him on.
New date night.
I want to have him on for season 2, episode 1, because, I think we got the tip of the iceberg. I think you got the very nuts and bolts, hey, this is my dad's life. This is how he sees it. Now I think what would be cool is to go back and really dig in more and challenge him a little bit on some of this stuff.
Would you have maybe also John or Jackie or Gina come on and maybe double question it or ask their perspective, share their perspective?
Well, yeah, because I also think that,
that'd be cool.
As a coward, that gives me a little bit of courage too, right? Because it's not just me saying, hey, this is how I remember things. It's this is how we remember it, right?
It's not trying to call them out in a negative way. It's just sharing what you went through.
It's just real. It's when you're family, you get to see people at their best, and you get to see them at their worst, right? And that's part of being family.
But not everyone wants to share that on a podcast.
Exactly. But we're going to get my dad to share more of that because, there are people who know me, who know him, who know our life, and they're going to listen to this and they're going to think, what? They're just going to think what when they see him talking because he has mellowed out so immensely from who he was when I was, in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade.
Yeah.
It's just, you'll hear in the interview, part of that's because he had me so young and we were growing up all together. So
Yeah.
so you know, Lida, I won't keep you much longer.
Why? Like I said, I'm having fun.
I'm trying
You
to.
don't want any more questions?
Nope.
That's it?
That's it. That's all
What?
the questions I had. You saw the email.
I want to keep talking. I don't get out much. I want to talk. Let me talk more.
No, we'll have you on in season 2.
Okay.
Lida, thank you for joining us.
This is fun.
This was fun.
I was nervous.
No, I'm good at making people feel comfortable. So we're gonna have Papa Pappas here in a second, but before we do, a word from our sponsor.
What is copper glaze? Copper glaze is the finest manufacturer of kitchenware products on the planet. We have the best cutting boards, the sharpest knives, the best pots, and the most magnificent bowls for your kiddies and poochies to eat and drink that water and food out of. Contrary to popular belief, Copper Glaze is not a reference for Donald Trump's semen. Follow us at copper_glaze_kitchen on Instagram and like our Facebook page. Thank you. All right, welcome back. We are here at a New Dad with a guest that was by far the most requested guest we had throughout the season, and one that probably came up the most throughout our episodes. Papa Pappas, say hello to all Uncle Tickles, nieces and nephews.
How you doing, New Dad viewers?
That's right. So Papa Pappas is here. We're going to talk about his life growing up and his own childhood, and then kind of what he remembers about being the father to Uncle Tickles. So you were born in 1959.
Yep.
Chicago, Illinois.
Chicago, Illinois.
2 Greek parents who were first generation.
Correct.
Correct. So I guess talk to my viewers and listeners a little bit about what Chicago was like in the 60s, what growing up in Chicago was like.
I think growing up in Chicago, it was pretty simple and it was pretty innocent. I mean, it didn't seem like anyone had a lot. We didn't have a lot of money. But everyone didn't have. No one had money. Everyone was in the same boat, so you didn't really know that. Hey, maybe you guys were a little poor, but everyone was about equal. But the difference was there wasn't this level of violence, that you see nowadays with gangs. Yeah, there was gangs, but they weren't like they were now. I'm sure there were drugs, but the drug problem wasn't way out of control. It seemed like everyone had their parents. I think that was huge. It wasn't a lot of, it didn't seem like a lot of single family parents,
Right.
parenting, families. They're mainly husband and wife raising their kids, and, no one had a lot, but everyone was, pretty happy with what they had, and they didn't know they didn't have a lot.
Right. I know you ended up moving out of the city later in life. Did you stay in pretty much the same neighborhoods in Chicago?
Well, there was 2 neighborhoods I lived in. One was Rogers Park, and that was until 5th grade, and then the other one was 5th grade to about senior year of high school, and that was the Austin neighborhood.
Okay.
So those were the 2 neighborhoods I lived in.
And for me growing up, I think when I think of your childhood, the North Austin days are more synonymous. I remember hearing about the Pop Warner days from not just you, but Uncle Lou and Uncle Tom as well.
Yeah, I was older too, so it played a bigger role. But the North Austin Boys Club at that time, it was a good deal. It was run by the city's police 15th district police force, and they had a boys club, and they had baseball, they had football, they had basketball programs,
Boxing,
and
right.
they had boxing programs. Yeah, they did. And so it was like they kept the neighborhood kids busy by
Keeping them off the street,
activity,
yeah.
Like involved in activities. So it was a good thing.
And so through sports, you kind of earned a reputation and kind of like a local tough guy.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Sports kind of, I was able to make make a name for yourself. But sports, I found myself in sports. I started playing sports. I started getting better. All of a sudden, I found out I was good in sports.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and
There's
then,
an instant gratification there,
yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, and it kind of lifted my self-esteem. I was taller than the other kids in my class. You know, all of a sudden I started gaining weight, and I was stronger, and then I started to receive, accolades for playing sports. I was good at it, and people started to notice, and it kind of made me, it kind of was a huge part of who I was at the time. You know, I don't know if that's good or bad or whatever, but it wasn't bad, but it might have taken away from educational type of things. Like I probably was like, oh, I'm a sports, I'm a jock. I really need to study as hard and this and that. No, I'll always be a jock. I'll make it, but that's not how the world is.
Right.
You know.
Right. And during this time, you're in Chicago, you're moving around, you get to this North Austin neighborhood, you're kind of the benefactor of this great program from your own words, where,
Yeah.
that was run. You're able to put a lot of time there. And that's good because your dad's working a lot during this time. He's not super present.
No, he wasn't present. He worked it seemed like when we woke up in the morning, he was already gone to work, and then by 8, and then he came home around 8 o'clock every night. So it was like, we really didn't see him a whole hell of a lot.
Right. And he was a world class, I don't know if world class athlete, but
he was a good athlete in his own right.
Right.
He played football. I think he ran track.
Right,
And I
at
think
VMI.
we had discussed it. When he was in the Army during Korea. He didn't fight in Korea.
Right.
He ran for the U.S. Army's track team. They were based out of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So I mean that was his Korean War experience.
Yeah. Well, and so he has the military school and the military background. He goes to law school, becomes a lawyer. He's working a lot. Sounds like a little bit of a hard man and rigid, maybe.
Well,
Disciplined for sure.
yeah, discipline for sure. I mean, you have to be disciplined to get through the
That sort of-
Virginia Military
Right.
Institute, and
And then law school.
Yeah, then be in the Army, and then be in law school. You have to be fairly disciplined, or you won't make it really.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
a lot of stuff to juggle.
Yeah.
A lot of
And-
things to be in. Yeah.
And not only that, but quickly found himself with 5 kids,
5 kids,
Five kids.
5 of us. So there was
a lot of mouths to feed.
a lot of mouths to feed. You have to work day and night, and my mom really didn't work at that time.
Right.
When we were really young, she worked.
Yeah.
She basically waitressed, and that was it. For a few years to pull in extra money. Before my dad actually got out of law school.
Right.
So that's what she did. To make it.
And so the North Austin football years. One thing that stood out to me that I think is worth mentioning. The team. It wasn't just that it was this nice program, right? And it wasn't just that you were good. The team was an awful good team.
The program was an awful good program. It was well known throughout the city and the suburbs as one of the best programs in the state.
And became a power kind of in the nation, right? Because you guys would go around and play these teams from other states.
Yeah. Every year at the end of the year, we'd sell these raffle tickets, and we'd earn enough. Well, we get enough money. We had a big event, and then we raffled off all the stuff. But that money helped us buy plane tickets, and we would go to different states, mainly like southern states, Arizona. I went to Arizona and Florida, and we go to like Texas or California, and we play in these bowl games, for grade school, which is kind of cool,
Super cool.
Yeah.
And it's something I was really hard for me to relate to, given my Pee Wee career. It didn't quite have anything like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that seems like an awesome thing for a kid of that age, because
Yeah, it was
probably we're not
awesome.
experiencing that stuff had it not been for that football program.
No, I would have never experienced it
Any of
if
that
it
stuff.
wasn't for the North Austin Boys Club.
At some point you start getting into a little trouble, and that starts to worry your dad.
Yeah. I mean, we ran. I mean, it was petty stuff. I mean, we might have stole hubcaps. Maybe we smoked some pot.
Right.
You know, we drank alcohol once in a while. I mean, and those things, you know, those things would lead to trouble.
Right. Well, and ultimately, I know how your dad reacted to that, but like, I guess I'm thinking more in the immediate. Like, as you're going through this phase, I guess I remember a story from Yaya about Papu, chasing you in a stolen car.
Well, the car, well, stolen what we took my aunt's car. If you can call stealing your aunt's car, she used to live with us. My aunt lived with us, and what happened was we had stolen a bunch of merchandise out of a factory, and we had set it and we had hid it. So then what we did is at night I took my aunt's keys when she was sleeping. I took the car, and then I picked up my friends and we went and we got this. It was all it was stolen, like sporting stuff, helmets, jerseys, stuff like that. It was out of it was out of a factory that was storing football equipment.
So
basically,
but
Yeah.
he chased you down in the car.
yeah, he did. It was kind of a surprise. We went over there, picked up the merchandise, loaded it in the car, and we're driving. It was maybe 3:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden I see my dad walking down the street. And I just was panicked, and I just put the car in park and jumped out, and we all jumped out and ran, and just left the car running there. With the stuff in the car and everything, and my dad, he got the car. I eventually had to go home and face the music, but right at that point, I was too scared. I just put the car in park, slammed on the brakes, put the car in park, and jumped out and ran.
Now that actually brings up another story I remember hearing about Papu, and that is like till his death, he would challenge you guys to foot races and win.
Yeah. My dad was.
I mean, you said he ran track for he
was
for the
good.
Army.
Yeah.
So outside of some stolen merchandise and borrowing your aunt's car without permission, I know you spent time at a couple different high schools. There were St. Pat's, Steinmetz,
St. Pat's, and Marion Central.
And then
I went to 3 different high schools.
So somewhere in there, Steinmetz and St. Pat's are both here in the city, in the Chicago area, and then so somewhere like the summer of '76, something around there, you guys moved '77.
Yeah, it was in '76, the summer of '76, we moved to Wonder Lake, Illinois.
Wonder Lake, Illinois.
Yeah, out of Chicago, and we everyone started going to school out there, and it was my senior year of high school.
So, I guess there's a couple different questions about this. Obviously, there's a little bit of culture shock coming from the city to Woodstock.
Pretty much.
It's way two different worlds, especially going in 1977. I mean, Woodstock now probably looks like a thriving metropolis compared to what you saw.
Yeah, right. It was, and being out there is like you needed a car.
Right.
You needed to get if you wanted to
There's
go
no public
somewhere,
transportation.
Yeah, right. There's no public transportation. All your friends are dispersed all over the county.
Right.
Like we're not
On the
like
same
not in
couple
Chicago
blocks.
where they're all in a 4 or 5 block radius.
Yeah.
All your friends are, and you all hung at one park that was in that in that area. So yeah, it was kind of different.
And your dad has this idea that he wants to have a farm too, right?
Yeah, well, he had always had this dream of having a farm, and not farming it as such because he leased the property,
Right.
but living in that type of environment.
Yeah.
He wanted to. That was a dream of his.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's able to do that. At
Yeah.
the same time, he's concerned that you had mentioned it at the top of the show. There were gangs, not as we know them.
Not as violent as
Right.
things there are now.
Do you think if you guys hadn't moved, you would have fallen into a gang?
No, I don't think so because basically our gang we all hung out together, and the area we all hung out was we were our own little gang from our own little turf.
Right.
I mean we all hung at one park in Chicago, and we
What
didn't.
was the name of your gang?
We didn't really have a name of the gang. our gang was called Park 9 because
That was the park you guys hung out at?
that was a number of the park that we hung out at. So
It was just
but
like
it
the
was
Park 9 guys.
it was just a Park 9, and we just hung out there. Everyone lived within a few blocks of Park 9. There wasn't really no other gangs in that area, so we were just our own little gang, you know.
So what were your first impressions of Woodstock? Were you pretty bummed about having to move all the way out there?
You know, I was kind of eased into it because during that whole summer, I went to football practice
Right.
over
At
at
Marion.
Marion Central. So, like, I knew everybody. Well, don't say I knew everybody. I just knew the football players.
Right.
You know, and that was about 40 kids already. So I had a pretty good start on, you know, I'm making friends. I kind of knew the area, you know. So it wasn't so bad, you know. I was kind of acclimated, you know, into it slowly by, you know, going there and, you know, and playing football and getting the recognition you get from playing football and this and that, you know. So I had a good start, you know.
Because I've definitely heard these stories about, you know, what it was like when you came from the city to Marion and just how you you know, in your own words, you destroyed guys.
Yeah, I mean, they hadn't, like I said, they hadn't quite played the competition I had played against. And plus, you know, I had been playing a lot longer than some of these kids. You
And
know?
the schools they're playing against are other kids that hadn't been playing
And
against.
you know, maybe they started playing when they were freshmen in high school.
Right.
I had been playing 3 or 4 years already. By
Right.
that time, I was a freshman. I already played, and I played for a really good program, North Austin Boys Club. So it taught me to be a really good football player. I knew the fundamentals. I knew techniques. They instilled. You know, there's a certain way you play with a reckless abandon, speed, and hitting, and you know, it was. So when I went to Marion Central, it was just like a step up from what they had been seeing. You know,
Right.
there was good football players
Yeah,
at
for
Marion
sure.
Central. You know, I mean, you know, there was good players. You
Yeah.
know,
And so it's at Marion that you meet, you know, my mom, your future wife.
yeah.
You know, talk about that a little bit. Just how you guys met and
You know, it was basically football season was basically over, and I was still hanging out. You know, I hung out with some of my friends that had played football, and we would go to the park and we meet other people from the school there. You know, and your mom was one of them. You know, so and that's how I first met her. Was, you know, after school going to the you know, park and then just hanging out. And, you know, and that's how I met your mom.
so that's 77. By 81, you guys are married, and I'm on the way.
Yep, and you're on the way. Yep.
And
First baby born in McHenry County in
right.
1982.
that's right. It is, I have a newspaper clipping to prove
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And but yeah, so you know, I guess you can call that pretty hot and heavy, pretty fast. You know, things move pretty quickly for you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, I think so. I think, you know, back then, I think, you know, people met, they decided they were going to get married earlier.
For sure.
It's a different kind of a scene right now.
Yeah.
You know, adults wait longer, get careers, get houses, save money, do things, then they have kids.
And also, you know, during that time, that's when your dad gets sick.
Yeah. My dad got sick. He died in '81, so it was probably I want to say he might have been diagnosed at the beginning of '81 or late '80 with a brain tumor. He had lung cancer, brain tumor. You know, I think basically he had lung cancer, and then the
Cancer spread.
cancer spreading, and then it spread to his brain. So it was and it was inoperable, and you know, and so it was a fairly quick, maybe 8 months from diagnosis to the time that he actually passed. You know,
And that's a hard time for you know, for anyone, you know, losing their dad. But you know, it's made you know, I wouldn't say slightly, maybe exponentially harder for you because, you know, you graduate high school, you meet my mom, you guys move to Rockford, you're going to Rock Valley, you're playing football, and you suffer a knee injury that ends your football career. So around the time that you're dealing with, you know, which, you know, now in hindsight, it probably seems like a small thing to be dealing with is the end of that.
knee injury and everything. It's
But
like,
in
you
the
know,
moment, that was
it was pretty big in the moment.
Yeah,
I mean,
your
you know,
identity had been built kind of
Yeah.
around being this athlete.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
stud.
you always think, you always in the back of your mind, you're always gonna, like you're always saying to yourself, sports is gonna end at some time, and it ends for professional athletes
Yeah.
too. So it's gonna end for normal people too.
For sure.
And I knew eventually it was gonna end. It just went in. I just went in a different route. The injury, I just thought I would play up to a certain level, and that would be it.
When your dad goes, do you have at that point, any regrets?
Well, yeah, I think you do. I think once when there's someone close to you that they pass, you always look back and you have regrets. Like, I should have spent more time. I should have done this. I mean, you look back and you're like, well, what could I have done that could have made this relationship, better, or been more involved in the relationship? And you say to yourself, man, that's I miss an opportunity, and but life's short. You kind of take everything for granted. You don't realize it until like someone's gone, how much you really wanted to say, to talk to them, and and to share your thoughts, and it was that is hard,
Mhm.
and I think it happens to a lot of people. They have regrets about that.
And how do you think that affected you, moving forward as a person?
I guess when I look back at it, I look back and I try to evaluate our relationship and the things that I thought as my dad as a father, how he raised us, and I thought, oh well, maybe some of the things that he wasn't able to do, like spend more time with his kids, I would try to. I know he was trying to build a successful law practice and this and that, but I wasn't a lawyer, I mean,
Right.
so
It was hard for you to
yeah,
relate
it
or
was,
appreciate.
it was. I wasn't going to, I wasn't going on this really, a professional type of track. So I thought, well, what I'm doing, I could spend more time with my kids, and I figured that's what I wanted to do. I thought tried to spend as much time with you guys as I could. I coached you guys, I coached the
For sure,
girls.
yeah.
I went to all your games and stuff. Which my dad wasn't able to do.
Right.
And my dad wasn't able to coach his own kids and stuff. Well, I thought, that was one thing, and I miss my dad. I mean, miss the, his influence on me, and he was a smart man, much smarter than me. So
You wonder what sort of advice or what
yeah,
sort of
right. I
direction.
mean, well, he could have helped me as I became a parent, moved on, and had more kids, and he was a grandfather, and you just it never happened, so you don't know. It's
Right. A lot of what ifs.
yeah, a lot of what ifs. Yeah.
So he leaves behind 5 kids. He leaves behind a wife. And I think this is a good time to talk about Yaya a little bit. What was she like as a mom?
I thought she was a pretty good mom. She was dealing with 5 kids I mean, all within like a year and a half apart from
Right.
each other. It was a madhouse.
Yeah.
But I thought she did a pretty good job. I mean, when we were younger, we were, well taken care of. She was always around us. I mean, we always went to the beach or, the parks and this and that. So, she did a lot with us. When my dad died, I was already married, and so was my younger sister Tia.
Yeah.
She was already married also, so we were out of the house already by that time. So it was my mom was left with three younger
Yeah.
kids in high school. So
And your brother Lou stepped up big time. He
yeah, he
became
did.
a lot.
Yeah, once he got out of high school, and then he got job when he got a job and was working. He shared his paycheck with my mom and to help my mom out. I mean, he lived there for God's
Right.
sake.
I mean, and Yaya was a huge part. I may not have ever met Papu, but
Yeah.
me growing up, Yaya was, outside of my parents, probably like one of the biggest influences I can think of. As far as her presence and just.
She was proud of her grandchildren.
Yeah,
and,
I think definitely I would describe her as like a matriarch of the family.
Oh, definitely, yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And she was, I think, in a lot of ways, the tie that bound everyone together.
Yeah, and it kept the family together. I
For
think
sure.
she did.
This is also a good time to segue into your and you mentioned it. You're out of the house. You're expecting a child. I come shortly after. So now you've gone to losing your own father to becoming a father in just 3 months. I guess what's it like to be a 22-year-old with a newborn son?
Well, I actually didn't know that much. I mean, of course, growing up, I've always had brothers and sisters around, so I could, I knew what it was like growing up. But raising a child and then growing up are kind of two different things. The responsibility level of raising your own child, and it's a job that until they actually leave your house, it's a full-time job every minute of the day, every week of the month, every month of the year. It's it's the hardest job you'll ever do in your entire life is parenting.
For sure.
It's easier to go to work than it is to stay at home and be a parent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. As someone who's now a stay-at-home parent, I can say that.
Yeah.
During this time, you're also working nights, correct?
Right.
Right. So you guys are doing this to try to offset the child care costs a little bit.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, when we first started working, I was working days, and then Yaya, actually, my mom, your Yaya took care of you for the first 6 weeks before we could actually get you in, because you can't take a newborn into a daycare center.
Right.
They gotta be a certain age.
Yeah. For sure.
So and then it was a little bit later than that I went to.
Tonight's.
Yeah, you were probably, I don't know, you were probably about 6 months or something when.
And you did that for a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
did it for a long while,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I took care of you during the day, then I would hand you off to your mom, and then,
Good.
actually, I would hand you off to a babysitter for like another hour, then I would go to work, and your mom would come home from work and take you. So you weren't at a babysitter very long.
No. And not that I remember anything from this time period, really.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember, like some of my, or one of my earlier memories is bringing you lunch. Bringing you food, mom saying she forgot your lunch or you forgot your lunch and driving it out to Elgin.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's just like that's.
She would just bring me lunch for
Yeah.
once in a while, just so we can see each other. I
Yeah.
because I would go to work. I wouldn't see her. I'd
Right,
hand her
yeah,
off,
'cause
and
it'd be
then
the-
I would
the
come home
babysitter.
late. She'd be sleeping, and then she would get up in the morning to go to work. I mean, it's just the time we saw with each other wasn't a lot. Let's face it.
Well, and I'm trying to bring up the fact that it's tough. Like that time period's, it's,
I think it's all. I think
trying.
it's tough for
Yeah.
young parents.
Yeah, for sure.
To raise, to raise their, children like that. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do.
It may seem like a little bit overblown to call it traumatic, but I guess the reason I was leaning at because so you have this surgery that ends your playing career a little
Yeah.
unexpectedly. Your father dies, and also your place of employment is pretty crazy at this time too. You're working at a hospital for the
It's a
criminally
mental
insane.
institution,
Yeah, for the criminally insane as an orderly.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're not doing your job is not pleasant.
No, the job's not pleasant. So it was nice to come home and
Play with a little
be
baby.
child.
Yeah. I guess talk about me as a baby. Then what was I like?
Oh, you were a delightful little kid. You weren't very fussy. You were happy all the time. You were easy to play with. You pretty much could entertain yourself. I could put you down with toys and you would play. I would take you to the park all the time. You'd love the park. I mean, you'd scream bloody murder when when it was time to go.
Oh,
but you were a really good kid.
And a couple years after I show up comes Jono.
Yeah, 2 years in Jono, and then another
2 years Jackie.
and then 4 years came Gina.
So what are some of the differences that you remember with each kid? Maybe that's a little hard looking back.
I know Jono was a difficult child.
He was more difficult. He was a little more fussy. He cried a little more. He was like constantly moving. He was a thinner baby than you. He was on the go constantly. So you really had to watch him. Where you were, you just kind of hung out and did stuff. You were, Jono was all over the place. And then getting into everything.
Well, I mean, and some things I guess hold true, right? Because Jono's still very active and very much skinnier than I am.
Well, that's how he got his name, Jono. John, no, because you got to no stop. I was using everything. No.
Oh yeah. What do you remember about Jackie?
Well, she was the first girl,
Right, yeah.
so it was a special. She was a special baby. I mean, I probably doted over her and spoiled the living hell out of her. Held her more, carried her more, played with her more. But that's what I mean. I spent a lot of time investing in her for being the youngest. Being at that time the youngest and the only girl.
Yeah. Well, and by the time Gina comes, you're about 32 years old and you have 4 kids, which is something that isn't that crazy to you, but it's crazy to me. And I keep reminding myself that because as I'm about to turn 39 with 2, I have to think, well, by the time my dad was 39, I was like, I was in high school.
Yeah,
I was
right.
like, so, and I had 2 kids under 2. So just thinking of the difference from that standpoint kind of like really rams at home, just the 2 different scenarios that, that we're both in.
I don't know if there's anyone that's better than the other one. I don't know if it's better than. I mean, I had what's one thing about having your kids younger, when you're in your 40s or going, they're older. They're
Right.
then you could have a life.
Right.
I mean, if you have a life anyway, having kids was the funnest time. I would never ever change anything about that. It was probably the funnest time I ever had when you guys were little kids.
Yeah.
It was the funnest time, that I had,
And what did you have the most fun doing? Or what was the most fun?
Just doing things with you guys, like taking you to the park, playing with you guys. That was so fun. That was the fun part. You guys were still innocent. You could tell you guys anything. You'd believe anything there was. It was, you guys were happy. You guys were happy kids, and it was. I was happy. It was,
And did you feel like we were as brothers and sisters especially close?
I thought you guys were fairly normal. I mean, as far as being close, it seemed like as you guys got older and older, I mean, you get out of high school, that you could see the bonds between you guys were strong, which was a good thing. You
Right.
know? I mean, yeah, when you were younger, you had to live in the same confines in the same house and sleep in the same bedroom. See,
Right.
But as you got older, you guys all were going to college and doing this and moving out. It seemed like you guys had developed a good relationship together. Which was good. I'm glad to see it.
Would it be fair to say that the hardest thing during that time period was just money?
Yes, in a way it was. I mean, yeah, money is always an issue.
Right.
Money buys everything, and part of the deal too was all you guys went to private schools.
Right.
So that was a lot of money every year that we had to come up with to put you guys through grammar school, high school. None of you guys went to a public school, K through 12. You went to maybe a month of kindergarten in a public school in Crystal Lake before we moved to Woodstock.
And then I went to public kindergarten in Woodstock. I went to Westwood.
Okay, you went to Westwood.
But either way,
That was
yeah,
it. Right.
But I mean, that was
Other than
also
that was it.
But that wasn't
was
our
it.
choice, right? I'm just saying like that. I mean, let's
You're
be
right,
honest. Like
you're
mom's
right, you
family
did.
was like very much like
They're very
Our-
Catholics.
and they all of my
They all went to
to
St.
St.
Mary's.
Mary's, and they all went
So
to
you
Mary.
were all
Yeah.
destined to go to St. Mary's.
Right,
too.
and it was really important to
So-
mom that we all went.
Yeah. So I mean, that was.
And I think it made it harder that mom had a sister who had kids who were going to St. Mary too.
Mm-hmm.
Pete, Leo,
Yeah.
Andrew, and all them, they were all going to
so
St. Mary.
everyone had to go to St. Mary's. So
Right.
that's an extra financial strain.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So there was that, and I guess, and I'm not saying that, my recollection of our childhood wasn't happy, because it was. I think, there was, but there was like, I think, being young, and I think a lot of it has to do with what you're saying, going to private school. You had talked about, when you were growing up, kind of everyone around you didn't have a lot, right?
Right.
No one really knew that they didn't have anything, because when
no
you
one
looked
had-
around,
everybody
yeah,
about the same situation.
Exactly.
Everybody's in the same boat. yeah.
right? And where we live, when you looked around, like, you wouldn't notice it by looking at our neighbors, but when you notice is when you would go to school, right? And you notice it, maybe with, that with uniforms actually helped tremendously minimize some of that.
Level the playing field.
It
with
did,
you
they
know,
did.
so
But
no-
there's always something, right? They'll find something. So for us, it was shoes, right? It became, and especially for kids who are growing real fast.
Yeah.
It's, in a family who doesn't have a lot of money, it's ridiculous to spend a lot of money on a pair of shoes that a kid's
It's-
not going to grow out of
Yeah,
really
you're
fast.
growing out of every 6-7 months.
But for other families where maybe the money's a little bit more disposable, that's less of a concern, or maybe
Yeah.
even, whatever the case may be. So, I mean, we were more aware of it, I think, than our peers in school, for sure. And that's something that I think, again, just it was clear that it was something that was stressful for you guys, and now being a parent, I can't imagine.
Well, this is the way I look at it. And this is the way I kind of looked at it back then. Yeah, you might not have had exactly everything that those kids had, but guess what? Those kids all wanted to hang out with you guys.
Well, that's
because you
well,
guys were good athletes. You guys were, you had good personalities. Everyone liked you in school. People were
that was
kind
true.
of attracted towards you.
That was true for me later, though. For me, I would say that was not necessarily the case. Probably up until like 6th grade, 7th grade is when I really really 7th grade. By 7th grade, I remember that's when I kind of grew, and by that time it was I was starting to really separate from the other kids in that regard. But up until then, I was just 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. I think I struggled maybe a lot more than you think.
Probably, I probably wasn't aware of it.
Making friends, and a lot of and what's funny is a lot of the kids that I became really close with were some of the kids that were not necessarily always the nicest. Not that they tormented or bullied me by any means, but just it was like when you're trying to break into a group and you were more looked at it as an outsider for a really long time. And it wasn't until sports and until I started beating a lot of those kids that that door opened up, and you're now no longer an outsider. You're kind of one of them. And so I mean there was that, but you're right. After that, sports kind of did make it a draw, and yeah, there was. It became less of an issue at that point, I think, because now all of a sudden there was this other social currency that we were playing with. Right? It was, I could prove my worth, because I was.
Yeah.
I was good in
And
sport.
kids wanted to be hang out with you. Guys.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Because that instills confidence, and as
Yeah.
confidence grows, it's an important thing, and people want to be around other confident people. Also around this time, some of that stuff starts to take a toll that you're talking about, because you're going to work, you're coming back, you have a wife who's not working, you have 4 kids who are capable of helping and pitching in, and you're not seeing what you would like done. So this is where I think from my standpoint, there's a period where you're coming back and it's a palpable frustration. You're coming back and you're frustrated with the situation at the home because you're cleaning,
Yeah.
you're doing laundry, and you're cooking. Kinda what
Maybe
you're
I
talking
just thought, oh well, it's more and more is being dumped on me. I thought number one, always thought the kids could do more.
Right.
Like wash dishes, pick up, clean. Help around the house a little more.
Yeah.
Which isn't asking a lot.
No.
And so I mean that was part of it. I mean there was a lot of strain. Like coming home to make sure paying the bills and doing the grocery shopping, and then coming home to cook and make sure you guys had your laundry was done for in the morning for when you guys went to school. Everything was washed and dried. And,
Right.
Yeah, doing playing all those roles, it does put a little strain on you.
And now I wonder. I'm just curious. Is there a part of you looking back where you're kind of looking at that situation and you're thinking that there's things you could have done as a parent, like earlier on when we were younger kids, to maybe instill
It's more
habits
responsibility,
or more,
you know. I
yeah,
mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, I probably let you guys off the hook by, cleaning up after you and doing stuff, picking up after you and stuff like that. We didn't hold you guys accountable and didn't, give you guys more responsibility for your own, actions and stuff, and help around the house and be part of that. I probably didn't do that, and that's, oh well, that happened. I mean,
Well,
it didn't hurt you guys.
right, yeah, I'm just
In
curious.
the-
I'm
in
just
the
curious.
long run,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't hurt.
And then I think there's that, and I think there's also the added thing where like you, maybe more than the average person, are sometimes unaware of the tone and when you get excited and when you
Yeah.
get excited,
That's what people say.
Yeah,
that
it's
that
frightening
speak, but
sometimes.
yeah, I guess it could be.
yeah, and it's pretty
But-
scary.
But if you know me, if like some of the people that really know me real close, they go, "Oh man, I don't see why other people think that. You're so mellow, so laid back, so
You
so
are
chill."
super mellow and chill
So
now.
chill,
you
you
are
know?
you are really mellow and chill now, and it's probably very misleading for some of the audience. Especially, I mean, I'm imagining like Jenrick and Suds and Flynn who are watching this, and they like they've seen you, but like they haven't. It was sometime after college, and I think part of it is also the relationship between us changes as I become an adult, and I start to first understand some of the things that you've been telling me for a long time, and also it's just I'm like less of your problem to a certain degree because now it's like I'm an adult. It's like I'm
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm-
you
I'm
grew
39
up to,
years
you grew
old,
up to be, a good person, and a good. I knew you were going to be a good father. You just grew up to be a good person, and I wasn't worried about, worried about you.
probably more so than I would say.
I have
Would
other
you?
kids to worry about.
Yeah.
You're the oldest.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I mean, you're
right.
already there at a certain point. Now I gotta, worry about the younger kids a little more.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. But I guess that leads to a good question. Out of all of the kids, who was there a kid you worried about the most?
Now,
No, just like in general, looking back. Now that we're all adults,
looking
back,
back.
who did you worry about the most?
Boy, that's a tough question. Probably Jackie, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I knew, for some reason, Jono was more driven. It seemed like he had it together more in high school,
Mhm.
and he seemed to be going. He seemed to have everything together. Knew what he wanted to do. Knew where he wanted to go. You, on the other hand, it didn't seem like you really knew where you wanted to go, but I still was confident in you. You were smart. You hadn't at that point lived up your expectations. Your grades didn't reflect your intelligence at that point yet, but I still had confidence in you. Gina seemed like she was too wired and narrow, straight. She was more focused. Jackie was a little less focused,
yeah,
and I thought, that we had gotten off to a pretty good start after high school when she went to nursing school. I thought, we're on the good path. And when that dropped out, I just
Got
probably
scared,
worried,
yeah.
a little more worried about her. But you guys really never gave me that much to worry about, I don't
Yeah,
think.
no.
Really,
no. I mean, there was a couple instances I can think of, but yeah, but yeah.
I was a little worried in a couple instances,
Yeah.
but they were illegal,
But also, I mean, I do think that in the big scheme, like, and especially with my group of friends, for the majority of things, we were pretty tame and we were pretty.
You had a pretty good set of friends.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like looking back at it and knowing what Jono and Frank,
Jono's friends were good too.
they were good. But I feel like looking back, the kids were getting progressive. They were doing progressively more adult things, I guess, at younger ages than we ever were.
I would have to say that's probably true.
Yeah.
When you look at Jono.
Yeah, and even Jackie's.
Jackie. Oh yeah, Jackie too at that.
Yeah, for
Jackie,
sure.
Yeah, maybe more so than Jono.
Yeah,
even.
for sure,
Yeah,
100%.
right, yeah.
So that was crazy to me. Just, I mean, and it has nothing to do with you guys as parents, or just more so an observation where it was just,
I guess as a parent, you have to worry about your kids' friends and who they're hanging out with and everything. But
And I wasn't too worried about who you guys hung out with. You guys
No.
all had pretty good friends.
no, for the
Yeah.
most part, yeah,
Yeah.
100%, I think so. Still, though, I think we have to bring up, since we're talking about some of Jono's friends, the night that you caught them peeing out of the window.
Oh, well, you guys would, I knew you guys were gonna party, okay? So it's like, okay, just don't drive around, okay? I get it. You're gonna party. Go upstairs you guys had a big room. Go upstairs, sit with your friends, party up there. Don't get in a motor vehicle and drive. That's when bad things happen.
It's true. Yeah.
So I'm sitting outside. I went outside. I don't know. Maybe I think I might have had
Walking the dogs.
We had taken the dogs outside in the backyard, and then all of a sudden I see the window open up on the second floor, and I see someone urinating out the window. So my first instinct was I ran into the garage. I'm looking. I go. I know I got a BB gun in here somewhere. I'm gonna find that BB gun. I'm gonna blast that thing right off. So, but yeah, that did happen.
Oh yeah. I'm pretty sure that night ended with you challenging all of Jono's friends to fight in the front yard.
Well, what happened was I went to bed, I think, and then I woke up, and then I had to go to work. It's really early in the morning. I think it was like 4:30. I woke up, and I went in, got dressed. Was going to work, and I opened up the refrigerator to get my lunch, and everything was gone. And you guys had eaten everything in the house. And I'm like, damn. So then they came down, and I told them, I said, everyone out on the front lawn. I'm kicking everyone's ass. Because I was like, I had it. You guys have been up all night, partying, I can hardly sleep. I can hear you guys. Don't forget, so I need to go to sleep,
Still not as bad as living underneath Jimmy, though. Jimmy Stabler.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty bad,
Can't sleep with that party going.
Oh, geez. Well, with Jimmy, my room was above Jimmy Stabler's room. Man, sometimes you play that music so loud, my bed would vibrate.
Well,
I'd be sitting in bed going, holy cow, my bed's vibrating.
I think I told you what I used to do. I would sneak into the basement and pull out his fuses. And so I would pull out so there was no electricity going to his room. And then he'd be so fucked up he wouldn't realize what had happened. And the next morning I would just go plug it back in. There's two stories that I want to ask you about I'd heard from your mom growing up. One was a story about Papu working for the CIA.
He was my father was he was a contract employee. He was
Right.
on contract, and he worked for the CIA. But I mean, it wasn't like secret spying stuff. He organized
Labor unions.
Yeah, organized labor unions
In
in
Central America?
and taught labor organizers how to organize labor unions. Yeah,
Yes.
in Central America, in Honduras.
And what time period was that kind of?
It was in the later 50s.
Later 50s?
Yeah.
Okay. So like right
57,
around, okay,
58.
right before you're born.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, before I was born.
And then there was another one that there was a relative on someone's side, maybe your dad's or your mom's in Greece during World War II, who was helping like guerrillas and was going to be executed.
Well, the story goes like this. It's more or less when the Germans were fighting the Greeks in the mountains. There was Greek guerrilla warfare. So the Germans' idea to stop this warfare was to single out civilians. If there was an attack on the Germans by Greek
Guerrilla outfit.
Greek insurgents, they would execute so many civilians. That was the deal, and they had lined up my one of my mother's relatives who happened to be a doctor, but since they found out he was a doctor, they pulled him out. So
They could possibly use them
yeah.
for their own
Yeah.
medical purposes.
So yeah, he was spared a firing squad. They would just grab like 10 people
Right.
and just shoot them.
Right.
for whatever, just because there was an attack on their, on their
1 for 10,
Yeah,
whatever
right,
whatever
yeah.
the rule might be. Wow. Okay. Jake, we'll switch gears a little here too. So we had Jackie and Gina here today. Those are my 2 sisters. They wanted me to ask you, who is your favorite child?
I had this discussion with someone today already about this, and it was funny because it wasn't any kids; it was a friend of mine, and I told her, I said that I never played favorites. I don't take sides, one kid against another. All my kids basically are the same to me, I love them all the same, I don't really have a favorite child at all. And I had this discussion today with someone, that I don't pick favorites, so.
Okay. I think it's Jackie still, but
Jackie, at this point in time, Jackie, because she always needed, was more probably needy than the rest of you guys.
yeah.
So I think that if it seems like I'm, I like Jackie more, it's just the fact that I interact with her more because maybe she needs more and, this and that,
That's fair.
other than that, so, and plus she's single. You guys are all married. You got your lives, you got your wives, you got your kids. You guys are all you're doing stuff. You guys are all wrapped up with them. Jackie's the only one that isn't really doing anything,
True.
So, she has more time to hang out with me.
Can you tell the audience a little bit about the gas chamber growing up?
Yeah, the gas chamber was when the kids were little. If I had to fart, I'd grab the kids and I'd start, I'm putting you in the gas chamber, and I'd straddle them, I'd blow a fart. It
was like
the funniest damn thing I ever seen.
It was a leg
It was
lock
so funny,
where,
yeah.
where our faces are in his
my buttocks.
Yeah. And,
And I'd rip a fart. You guys would be screaming.
this was a pretty
Your
common.
mom would be screaming at me.
This would be a pretty common occurrence as a
it
child.
was fun. I just thought it was funny to do it.
Do you have any questions for me?
I think is what have you learned as far as being a parent? How does it, does it change anything that you look back on in life, and you might not have thought about? Hey, this is how it was for my, because now you're walking in my shoes.
I guess I saw how I saw conversations that we had that worked, and I saw conversations that we had that didn't work, right? And I think if I'm being totally honest, the ones that didn't work are the ones that got more emotional, right? Where
Probably,
where they get, because then all of a sudden at that point there becomes a point in those sort of conversations where both parties are no longer like whatever the point of the conversation has gone out the window, right? And now it's more so about hurt feelings or about energy or about now you're challenging me or you're telling me as an adult that I don't know what's right.
So, and then sometimes as a parent you're like, okay, I've had enough. I've
Right.
heard enough. This is it. I don't care what you say.
For sure.
Bam. I got other things. I got to move on. I'm tired. this is it, and this is the way it's going to be. Because
sure.
you're the parent.
Right. Well, yeah, and I think that's I mean,
Yes.
and I don't think anyone's saying that there aren't moments where that's called for. That's for sure going to be called for. But the other thing I think I've learned the most is, and this is probably the biggest thing, and it's not necessarily really a helpful thing to have knowledge of, but it's just knowledge of the spectrum of love, where I think before having a kid, I had such a very narrow understanding or experience with love. I love my family. I love my brothers and sisters. I love my mom and dad. I love my wife. But the love for a child is just
It's different.
it's exponential.
Totally
It's crazy
exponentially higher.
Greater,
You learn
yeah.
more about love. You open yourself up.
for sure.
You learn the capacity that you actually have within yourself to
Yeah.
love.
Yeah,
It's
wild.
having a kid.
That's probably the biggest thing I've learned is just that experience, and it's kind of again it's
It's
just
a
more
good experience.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
It's
right.
eye opening, and it's it really is. It's wonderful. But with it comes a ton of responsibility, and not necessarily a horrible thing, but it's a heavier weight, right? Because now
And-
there's other people that you're responsible
and
for.
just think about what I said. Those times when you guys were younger were the happiest times of my life. I mean, eventually your kids are gonna get older. They're gonna move around. They're gonna want to be with their friends.
Oh,
more.
yeah, for sure.
And then you won't. They'll be kind of distancing themselves from you.
Yeah, and that's a transition.
It's a transition, and then you look back and you go, these were some of the funnest times I ever had when they were young, and we did things together, and they just relied on me, and I was their best friend, and they always wanted to be around me, and I was the everything in their world.
For sure. All right. Well, that's all I really have for today. Well, I guess there was one other question they wanted me to ask, and I say that was Lida, Jackie, and Gina.
Yeah.
Any regrets? I asked you this about your relationship with your dad. Any regrets as a father, just looking back?
Probably, if there's any regrets, I think we touched on them before, was that maybe that I wasn't, when I spoke to you guys, I know you guys were always like, man, I'm scared of my dad, or my dad's, he'll get pissed off or something, but maybe that I didn't spend enough quality time actually in conversation to try to get to know your perspective, the way you felt, the way, it was always the way, okay, I think this is the way we should really go. I have experience here. You don't. What you're telling me isn't going to really work.
Right.
But I mean, something might work out of it, but it's not going to work. So here, let's just go my route. Because I know it's a proven route. And it's and it'll be successful. But maybe I didn't take enough time to understand your guys' points of view. As much. That possibly, be a regret. And I didn't, maybe the school thing was huge. Sports was never, maybe we concentrated, if looking back, was it too much on sports and not enough on school? I don't know.
I don't know. I
mean,
I felt like we butted heads more about school than sports, but yeah.
Oh, we did, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
About school, yeah.
Um,
Not about sports, but
Yeah.
maybe we concentrated too much on, maybe sports was, we elevated sports to a place where it really didn't belong. Like school should have been the number one thing, and sometimes football over.
For sure. Well, I think it's hard also
during
when
the season.
you start to excel in the sport too, right?
Yeah.
You start to have hopes that you might be able to turn that into like a ticket to do something more, you know. And not even saying NFL, but I'm just saying like when that becomes
education.
yeah,
Educational
exactly,
wise,
like a scholarship. Yeah, exactly. That's what. Yeah. There was one actually I just forgot about until now that came from Jenrick Flynn and Sons, and they wanted to know what makes you such a good dog dad. Why do dogs love you so much?
This goes back to the nature of me. Like I kind of think I'm highly misunderstood. I have a very sensitive and very loving, a personality. And dogs have just, I love dogs, and I've always have since the first time I got my first dog, who followed me home when I was doing my newspaper route, and I put him in between the doors. Between our back door, we had this little mud room. I kept him in there, and I talked to my parents about having a dog, and I brought him down there, and I opened the door, and I showed him the dog. It was my first dog I ever got. He followed me home. He followed me on my newspaper route all the way home. So then I've always had just this love for dogs. I don't know, because maybe dogs need to be cared. They need to be loved. I have that nurturing. I actually have that nurturing aspect of my personality that's there, and I think that's what makes you guys good parents.
So what do you think? What makes you so misunderstood? Do you think?
I think people they saw me as as a football player. Number one, as a football player, as someone that was rough and tumble, but I was always very shy growing up. Shy, didn't make friends easy. Was always quiet. I had a stutter. I stuttered, so I didn't speak very much. I was as I grew older, then with you kids, I had to be more assertive. You know, I had to step up. I had to step up more. It's not something I wanted to do, is to step up, but you know, I had to play a bigger role. And sometimes, you know, maybe I didn't handle the stress well enough, but that's not in my nature. You know.
You also have a little. I mean, like, and I'm not saying this like to pile up, but just more so as kind of like to justify. Like you have a little bit of a temper. You know, that's.
Yeah, I do. I did have a temper.
Yeah.
That's what made me a good football player. You know, and that's what probably helped make you guys good football players. You know, so yeah, I do have a little bit of a temper, but it seems so unnatural when it comes to the forefront. You know, it seems a unnatural part of me that that I would be, you know, angry or you know, or get mad. I don't really get mad. You know, maybe, you know, I've gotten older, I've tempered, you know, somewhat.
Do you think it's fair to say you shut down more so when you're mad? Or you trying to shut down?
Right now, I try to shut down
Yeah.
now when I'm mad because I don't want to let those feelings get the best of me. And I don't want to say, I'm old enough to know that, you know, when you're mad, you know, and you're angry, you're going to say stuff that you're going to regret. So just try to keep your mouth shut. Because in the end, you'll say something you're going to regret, then you'll look back on it, then feel you know guilty, and you'll be apologizing to no end, and you know for something you really didn't even mean. You know, it was just the spur of the moment, and you just blurted it out because you were angry. You know, and it's not worth it. I mean, I don't know. You know.
2 last questions. Has there ever been another human that you remember being afraid of? Another man?
I don't think so. I think, you know, what it really comes down to is this. I met so many people that were so dangerous and had, you know, close encounters with them that after a while I just quit being scared, you know, of anybody really. You know, because I had already seen, you know, as much as you could see, you know, and experienced it. So, you know, no one really scares me, you know.
All right, that's it. I have it. Everybody, thank you. That's Papa Pappas. We'll try to have him back next
You
next
have
season.
me back again.
Yeah, for season 2.
For something else.
Yeah. Thank you for tuning into this season. Before we go, we'll have Probcause take us away. Bye. It's also a pretty wild time, I think, just to think about, you know, like we're talking about the 70s, right? So, yeah, I guess just, you know, what kind of music are you guys listening to at that point? You know, is it Led Zeppelin?
Oh, there was some good music back then.
Yeah, well, for sure, great music, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people,
Well, that was probably our favorite rock band was, you know, Led Zeppelin. You know, of course, they had Rush, REO Speedwagon, Black Sabbath, you know, Aerosmith.
these are all
some
bands
pretty-
you've probably seen live as
Oh
well.
yeah, I never saw Rush, and I didn't see Led Zeppelin. You know,
I mean, and I credit you guys, you know, growing up, there was music in the house. You know, I will say, I remember U2, Genesis.
yeah, oh yeah.
Who else? There's another one that's escaping me right now. Supertramp.
Supertramp. Oh yeah, that was good music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised you listened to it. I thought you guys always grew up when you first grew up. You listened to rap. I
Well-
told you guys would always change. You would change your musical.
I still listen to rap.
Yeah, so do
Yeah,
I. I like rap.
I still listen to rap.
But
No,
you exclusively listen to rap. I told you guys one of these days you're going to start listening to something different. It's not just all rap, and I was right.